Much better. Hello again. Wow. Okay. So, if you didn't watch the video that came right before this, I was supposed to be streaming this podcast to my new channel, but the need to check technology before you go live is absolutely vital because then you'll find you're denied while you're live and you have to recover, and then find out that because I was on Zoom but couldn't stream, then it seems that it needed to be restarted. And so there's been a lot of wasted space and time, 18 minutes to be specific. But let us not use that as an excuse. So, I am thrilled to be sharing this, and because this is going to be taking place over on the Peaceful Inner Warriors United channel moving forward, I am very hopeful that you will subscribe to that channel and then find fewer things happening here, except for more of my randomness, though the more structured component of the Peaceful Inner Warriors United curriculum training program and all that is going on with that will be featured over on that channel. So I'm excited to be here. I am holding a quartz crystal that is pointed, double tourmalated. I'm not getting the languaging right, but I know others in the community would absolutely be able to share more about this particular beauty here. And I didn't actually mean to even talk about crystals, so it seems important to be able to mention that in ancient civilizations, apparently, you could actually program your crystals with information. And what I have heard that does make sense is that our DNA is actually being up leveled right now. So that DNA is changing from being more carbon based to more crystalline based, which I think on a symbolic level is being reflected in the upgrade to fiber optic cables that are all around the country compared to the old cables that can't get as much information through the wires as what the fiber optics can. The same is true with our DNA and the ability for information to flow through a crystalline substance or organism compared to carbon one, which is denser compared to more light infused. So that interesting fact about crystals hopefully gave you some insight that maybe you didn't already have. Hopefully, you did. But either way, what I would love is for you to take the opportunity to share this message, to let others know that this is going on. And I am very grateful to be able to bring to you the real Rome and matrix programming patterning discussions. What I was talking about before I got cut off with the other channel is the fact that I was looking into the flying constellation of German New Medicine that is reflective of the manic and depressive personality type. And that's reflective of conflicts that have taken place and then learned patterning within the neuro tracks, which is part of the reason why psychedelics are said to be really great at helping with re-imprinting. Because essentially, if you think of your brain and the neuro tracks, or if you just think of your mind as an open field of grass, of long grass, and then you see the familiar paths as the parts that are already packed down, or the familiar road systems. And then when you diverge off of that, it's harder going. But ultimately, that's how you actually change the neural pathways, which psychedelics can help with because the teacher is not ingrained in the pattern that the patient is. So, using those terms of status to identify the people in the dynamic, because the medicine doesn't have the pattern existing to take that route, it chooses a new, more direct route because it's the first time it's been there and it sees as many options as what a younger version of us didn't see with the version of reality we were seeing the world through, which is based on our trauma as well as the experiences of expansion that we've had the opportunity to experience. So, I hope this is really resonating for you so far in terms of recognizing that if the grass is beat down in one area of your life, I'd love for you to ask whether that is serving you and how. And if not, then what would serve you better? So then we can really start shifting our neuro tracks into a pattern that is going to serve us instead of undermine us. And the real Rome and the story that I want to share as part of the podcast that Maximus wants to chime in on, the real story of Rome is the reality of my empowerment. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that along the way through our lives, we come across characters for a reason, season, or lifetime. Sometimes the moment is lasting, sometimes it is prolonged. We get a variety in life because variety is the spice of life, yet we do need certainty too. Ooh, he's gonna fall off. The unpredictability of kids and pets, eh? I don't have children of my own, because children are often weaponized against those who are so out of the box that they would suggest blazing a path within your own neuro tracks compared to taking some kind of medication to change the pathway or how we experience the pathway. If we don't like the pathway, why do we keep going that way? We can change the way, and then our scenery changes, and then the stimulus changes, and then we start to change. But that need and desire and willingness to change in the first place stems from us, which is the reality of my empowerment, not mine specifically, but mine as in you have the opportunity to own it for yourself and to see how we have literally been owned by Rome or Vatican City, which is and was part of Rome or the area, but then it became its own intercity. So its own city within a city under the Holy See, where we don't see the holes because it's supposed to be holy. Holy moly, what do we say? That's a whole lot of Oli. I can't think of another word that would rhyme with Oli, but I like to play with words. And I believe that that is one of the ways that we actually experience the reality of my empowerment by having fun and learning to play through the process of life, to feel the joy. Feel the joy in your soul as you become whole. Oh, you are the one you've been waiting for. Yes, you are the one you've been waiting for. You're the one you've been waiting for. Did you expect to be sung to? Well, when you show up to my stuff, you should. But at the same time, it's not common. And there's activations in that. I want you to actually, in fact, in this moment, reflect on what happened in you when I started that. Just tune into it. Close your eyes. Reflect. What happened to your nervous system? Did you get nervous because I was doing something unfamiliar and scary that activated and triggered you and made you say, whoa, I don't know about this. I don't know how I feel about this. Did your nervous system shut down? Or did some part of you say, oh, wow, Amazing. This is an example that I want access to. I've never met someone that does what you do, Laura, I often hear. And it's just like, yeah, that has made it really hard to monetize what I've been doing because it's just what I am. It's how I am in the world is just a reflection of how I show up. When I did my first interview at Bear Oaks Family Naturist Resort, which is a nudist park, it's a beautiful park. But essentially, when I showed up there the first time and I had to get naked in the parking lot and then walk across the parking lot into a building where everyone else there was naked too, then it was just like, wow, this is interesting. And then when I was interacting with people, I looked at them in the eye still. And yes, I observed what they looked like below the chin. But my focus was on them and just genuinely connecting with them. And I found it very interesting because what I found out after doing my second interview at Bear Oaks last week is that not everyone is able to just have the view up top or to not look down or to wonder. It's like, I don't wonder what's under your clothes. I just want to know what's in your heart. I want to know who you are at a soul level underneath of the patterns that have broken, torn you open to the point of you believing yourself to be less than what you actually are, which is a grand overall designer who came here to experience creation through you. Each of us are the individuated expressions of the grand overall designer that we all come from and belong to. Except for while we're here, we pledge allegiance to different manor houses, which is under the manorial system, which gives us a liege lord or a top dog. And basically, that liege lord at the top of the manor is the papa that calls the shots to all of those underneath, including the villains, which are feudal allegiance, or they've pledged feudal allegiance and become a feudal ally. And so, what that means is that the one who has made the pledge does the bidings of the liege lord and themselves under the helping hand of the liege lord for as long as it serves both parties to fulfill such contract, which requires sometimes the villain to become the villain in someone else's story when they are caused to go out and cause harm to someone else who the liege lord asked them to. And that's when we say that we are operating under a system where the corporate government is actually deploying the dogs of the elite, which sounds really terrible. I meant to say pets because that's owned. And we're living in a usufructory system where we're getting frucked quite literally from the perspective that fructing is to extract the fruits from something. And we're seen to be very rich quarries, which are sources of wealth. Because obviously, we are the Eden, the energy den that we're guards in until we let in an entity because of the identity that we took on in order to buy belonging to that tribe that we identify with, which means entify is bringing a mental construct into physical form. So making something mental into physical. And when we take on an identity, then we start to check that box and fit our substance into that form, which was not born as big as what we are. So it's important for us to realize that the manorial system is very important to understand because it is based in lords, masters, and another title that would change the identity of the man or woman wearing the suit, which is the transformation. So we've heard that men and women wearing uniforms, ultimately, the uniform itself has a level of respect to it, that when you put it on, you feel more respectable because of the uniform you're wearing that is respectable. I wish you a wonderful weekend as well, and do wish for the weakness to end. as we take back the power to say that when a man is an I shy of je suis, I am in French, that's when we get back to the title placed on a man that was named otherwise after he lived and was no longer alive to contest the claim made about his life that so many have lived and pledged under the ghost spell it out and the script you are walking your life by, because a ghost needs a host for the gnosis that the system of the liege lord and what they believe to be best, that becomes then the way that we exchange energy. So I hope that makes sense in terms of seeing how even the man named Jesus, which I should say titled Jesus in the book, was named otherwise while he lived, which is important because that's when we start to see the conversions of identities that come in with every new name or title or personage that we take on, which is a new box of identity that we check in order to fit into a two-dimensional counterfeit version of reality, such as this. For instance, this virtual medium says that I am there on Laura J.E. Hamilton when actually all of my advertising for this call, this podcast that happens Fridays at 10 a.m. now on Peaceful Inner Warriors United, couldn't happen there because I only have I think 6 subscribers now. I started it 2 days ago. So please make sure you're subscribed over there because I will be going live there, but I didn't know I couldn't yet because I started this channel in 2015 and I'm pretty sure you need to have 100 subscribers in order to be able to go live, but I totally forgot that. But over on this channel, I'm not allowed to have a community because I've got that strike from 2 years that they won't take off. And then I'm going to have to do social media influencer training, just like what Jordan Peterson has to do for his licensing. I'm going to have to do it as to what I can and cannot share within the policies of this domain. If I am to be able to have the community component I should be able to, given how many subscribers I have and how much content I put out and watch time there is. And yet, because I don't pay attention to the algorithms specifically and create my content with those in mind, instead I focus on the divine and finding the vine that you need in the moment so that you can drink on your soul level, on the soul level. That's what I want to feed. I want to help with what you need on a soulful level so that your physical is not what is calling for you from a carnal perspective. Even though the carnal is not bad for the form and the vessel is what is required, it is the meat suit that transports the divinity, the God spark of you around, the light that you are, that your soul is. That individuated expression of the divine that is in your heart, and you'll find it spark all of you and maneuver through. That piece of you absolutely is needing to find expression through the body. For once we lose the form, we are no longer able to ground the frequencies that our energies do. Each of us have what's called a mantle. I would suspect, I heard it last night and then again tonight, and when I was learning about the teachings of Summit Lighthouse, which are alleged to be of the teachings of the Ascended Masters as channeled by Elizabeth Clare Prophet and Mark Prophet, which I learned because I interviewed Michael Seegers through the Michael and Laura show I produced 2 years ago when I was trying to find answers and my world had just been flipped upside down. And then someone had shared the prayer for the children that I wanted more information about. And she said, "Oh, talk to my teacher. He'll be able to help." And so I did. And I sat with him for 9 hours the first time. And it just blew my mind how much content he had of knowledge read. And some lived too. But he is a beautiful man. And basically, I just said, look, I have a lot of video skills, so I'll film these videos of you sharing the information, of me asking the questions that I need to know, but others likely will too. And then others can ask questions in the comments, and then we can really up level and scale this together. So that was my intention when I started the Michael and Laura show. And then there were reasons that I pulled away, which is because I could feel the energetic harvesting that was taking place during decree sessions when the woman given the title of mother in the community, when Elizabeth would be decreeing in front of the group, I could feel the entities feeding off of the loosh, just of a positive nature that was generated by all of those souls that are so purely and wholeheartedly offering energy. Those entities were feeding off of it, and I could feel it. And I didn't fully understand. And so that experience took me into the teachings of quote unquote ascended masters that no longer have a physical form. So they must work through us because we are the hosts for the gnosis they would like to channel through us, which is why we then have virtual counterfeit versions of reality that are literally called channels, you see. Well, I do not subscribe to the teachings of Summit Lighthouse, and I also do not recommend making any vows, curses, contracts, bindings, oaths, or any kind of spells that would possibly connect you energetically with another soul that you don't know how to resolve and make yourself whole, because there is the risk factor of getting bonded to that soul energetically, which I learned in the soul realignment teachings that I had studied when I became a practitioner in 2013 and subsequent trainings too. And I had said that to Michael when I was working with him on the Michael and Laura show. And I had said it's not a good idea to make a vow at any time, because if you've made that vow wholeheartedly, it's in your Akashic records, which are the energetic database that contain all of your soul's choices, past, present, and future, which is all happening now. If you actually reflect on the fact that the only time we've been in a not now moment is in our mind. So the Akashic records contain all of these choices. And if you make an oath or a contract or a vow, you invite that entity into your identity, but on a collective consciousness level. You invite that whole collective paradigm and the attaching body, which are the entities. You invite all of that in with those identities, which is the really crazy part. What do you call the divine now in your deciphering of language? The grand overall designer was a term that really resonated for me when I heard it from Paul Martinelli first. That was the president of the John Maxwell team I was involved in and got certified as a coach, teacher, speaker in 2011, and then dated one of the faculty for 4 years and then sold the program for a year and a half. So I got to go to these events as faculty support and on the team. So it was a really unique experience. But Paul was the one that first introduced me to the natural laws. And I want to just point out the fact there is a law of gender, which is all about timing and everything having its own divine timing, and then how that plays into all of the genres of drama based on our sex, of SECTS, of belief systems that we have about things, which are then performed with our sex in the expression of it with another. Digression. God is a term that so many are uncomfortable with. I often say source or creator. Those feel resonant for me because if you are going to be resourced, then you are sourcing the information again. So to have direct source connection, that works. I do also use the term grantor of domain and grantor of dominion as expressions of God as to why we need to be sure as to which liege lord we've pledged our allegiance to, such as even under the Summit Lighthouse that I was speaking of. You have to make a vow of secrecy that you won't share the information, because you shall not cast swine before, or you shall not cast your pearls before swine, they say. But what is more divine than giving someone a rope when they're in the gutter? I continue to try. And that is not in any way to say that just casting it astray is a waste, and yet it is also not the smartest use of time to do it unstrategically as I have been. So I am working on these things. But that acronym for God is a great way in my mind to be able to understand the hierarchy of creation from a very practical perspective. So if you think about the hierarchy of creation with the source creator, God, whatever you want, whatever title you want to put on the all. I often call it the all now, actually, because if the all is all things, then what is all not? So that makes sense to me. So if you want to put all on top, and then the all created us. So instead of calling it man and woman, which I have been, what if now instead we just put us? Because we're all us until we then fall into a third person pronoun, which is them, he, she, it, which is an impersonal experience of something or someone outside of us, right? So us was created by all, and we created the government. First as a de jure government that was supposed to be by the people, of the people, for the people, but then became de facto. And de facto, I break down to be de factory, to make the most sense, to basically say, if you're in de factory of McDonald's and a Burger King manager comes over and tells you what to do, just because that manager may have credit in his establishment doesn't mean he means anything different within the establishment of McDonald's. And the same is true within the corporate realm. The de facto corporate government is a unidroit government because uni means one and droit means right. So the one right way is what the unidroit governmental corporate usufructory government would have us be under now, which then become boxes on top of boxes on top of boxes. Because under the de jure government and the de facto government, which de jure government, did it ever really exist? I always felt like de jure was of day. So literally, when you translate it, it's just a letter shy from the French version of the same. But the government of the day is the one that would say, okay, let's play nicely together. And if we cause harm, loss, or fraud against another, or don't keep the peace, then we've got trouble. And there's a viable issue if there is a victim. But if there is not, then there is no crime, which is what the common law line is all about, except for the common law itself has been capitalized within this corporatocratic model. And what I mean by that is that as soon as anything is capitalized or specified, it is then limited to that which was written when it was. So if we have drawn from the unwritten in order to draw that into the contract, which is a contracted expression of the expanded form that the original common law comes from, before now the English common law or the King's common law or the common hyphen law, these are specified versions of that, which mean you can't draw from that anymore once you say that you're drawing from this, and you'll be implied to be drawing from the limited version, which is the problem. So all of this going back to the hierarchy of creation, all is on top, us is under all, government is under us because we created it to serve us, which is why men and women step into suits to become and act as public servants while they're in office, and then take those suits off and then go live their lives in the private where they're back to being us again. And then under the government, you've got the cops, courts, councils of the municipal sector, and then the corporations at the bottom in the private sector of the public domain. Does that all make sense? I'm just going to read the reality of my empowerment. You're a poet with your words, Laura. Thank you. Dogs of the elite rich. Doter. Oh, the doter of the elites. Wow, the doter. And then we dote on others too. Consider this man, Melchizedek, no beginning of days nor end of life, listening from the backward at 2 times speed since I got here 15 minutes in. Oh man, I have no idea how you do that. Listening from the backward at 2 times speed. How do you do that? While it's live. Interesting. Wow. Okay. So you've been fast tracking what is already fast. So you are quick. Melchizedek, the Melchizedek priesthood, is actually a full specialization group that descendants of Jesus, which is the Je suis, that is the I am, that is an I shy when limited by the command that we must fit into one book, and then took all of our guidance from that script compared to the one that we write with our lives. And at the end of our days, others reflect on and say, oh, wow, that was a great idea. I want to take that into my own life and apply. And when we do that, then we start to see the reality of my empowerment is the reality of man's empowerment. When we get back to seeing we don't need to choose a gender when the genres of drama we perform with our sex is a connection to the sections of belief systems that some subscribed to, but not all, which is the subcultural or countercultural cultures. That is the cult you are of a small sex of minority that then introduce themselves and gain their identity from the expression of their sex. Well, the trans movement has dominated that and made that very literal, but we are all to an extent stepping forward with our sex on display, because throughout all of this insanity, it has been the way that we made ourselves feel safe and separate. Safely separate is what our words make us feel. Because if we can bring that level of certainty by giving ourselves a box to put the words into, if we can give ourselves the gift of that while we actually go through the creative process, then we are able to have more variety and safety simultaneously if we are willing to learn how to drop the walls on the words. So then we can see that other things can be the same thing if we see the significance of the syntax, semantics, and semiotics. Syntax is the meaning assigned to a word. Semantics is the way each of those words with assigned meanings are orchestrated and positioned in relation to one another. And then semiotics is how all of that works together. I took a university fourth year elective that covered this, and I didn't know why that was significant, but now I do, because there's no way I would have even considered or known to look at the word syntax, semantics, and semiotics in a significant way as I do now if I hadn't been forced to play with it in that class. So thank you, McMaster University. I graduated in 2009 with an English degree, but started in social work and gerontology, actually, because I believe that our elders have great wisdom in them, just like these crystals. And what is so significant is that each of the elders, each of these crystals, these gems, each of them are holding down a frequency, a vibration, as each of us are. And when the God spark in us lifts, that mantle is no longer available, which is why I started talking about the Summit Lighthouse teachings of it through Michael Seegers in the first place. What Michael had said about Elizabeth Clare Prophet, mother, by those that subscribe under that cult, sure, what they said about her was she held such a significant mantle that when she left, it removed a lot of opportunity for others. And the same is true and will be for each of us. Because these mantles, I don't know what the till is, but the till at a checkout point is how you pay. And then you till the ground in order to work it up within the fields. So there is something about the mantle, and until is when you have to wait. I don't know what the meaning of the till is, of the toll, of the title. Oh, of course, the man title. The mantle is the man's title. To be able to hold such a thing, except we don't get the title while we're here specifically until we do, and then others flock to that special one that had that mantle, forgetting that each of us have one. It's just not everyone's burns as bright depending on what we fill ourselves with. So that is very interesting. What I wanted to also bring in is the fact that REAL is an acronym as well. So the reality of my empowerment as the real Rome that we are actually building right now by being relatable, ethical, altruistic, and loving. So, how do we make choices that are relatable, ethical, altruistic, and loving? How do we do it, though, from a sacred place instead of a scared one, realizing those are the same letters in a different order? So, to be relatable as one who has become very unrelatable in many ways, unintentionally, I am reminded of the fact that many say as people age, you your circle closes and it becomes smaller because fewer people know what you do, and you've become such an expert and specialized in the thing that you do by then that you don't really want to talk about things that don't matter. The small talk matters less. And so you don't want to just stay on the surface. You want to go deep. And if someone doesn't have the capacity that to meet you there, well, then they don't get to stay with you because you'd prefer your own company. Well, if we become too unrelatable, another comment that really stood out to me is no one likes to run with someone that always outpaces them. So we have to figure out how we can see that we are all running this race and we are doing it together because there is no finish line. So we're really just on the marathon of life, and we are meant to be nice to those that we cross the path of, and to also see that we sometimes can be the villain or the villain character in another story simply because that was what that soul needed in order to be able to be broken open in the way that only that level of betrayal or negativity, hurt, destruction could possibly do. And some of our souls love one another enough to be able to give one another those lessons. And then others of us are hurt because we don't deal with our shit and we fall in love with people that don't, and then we just throw shit between one another, and then it's done. Or you drag it out and it just leave a smear stain. It's just, we have to really see that if there's poo in a stew, I don't want it at any time. I don't care if you've picked it out, or you can use the example of a fly, just the same. Either way, if it's had it in it, I don't want it. And I don't care how cleaned up it's been. I'll take the next batch and I'll be willing to wait. You know what I mean? Generally speaking. But then we don't know about what's going on and in all of these things that we are digesting or consuming to be digested, if they can be, if they're real enough. So we have to be very mindful about where our energy is going, because where our energy goes, our attention flows. And if it is going where it is not serving us, then we are losing very valuable opportunities to be that which we came here to be. So if we see contrast that we don't like, smear stains or full out turds, we need to actually look at it beyond just being disgusted by how foul the discussion or the concept is. And instead, we actually look at the smear stain or what we're seeing, and we look at what it's teaching us. That is our contrast. And if we won't look at our contrast, we won't get clear about what we want that contrast taught me. If that contrast, if we're willing to look at it and find the lesson from it, we can actually gain clarity from it, compared to getting stuck on that neuro track of just and then we go right back into the emotion that got stuck there. Which is why there is a special practice that will be kicking off in November as part of a Transform Yourself Image challenge that I am leading. And the special practice is a holistic, which is whole eye stick, plan and approach to self-care. So the special practice will be part of that transformational program. And the emotionality component is so key, because if we won't move the energies in motion that stopped being allowed to move, which means they got stuck in an organ that was willing to hold them for us until we dealt with them. If we start to see the body from that level of energy, then we start to see we don't need to cut things out, but instead embrace them and offer acceptance in a way we didn't have capacity to before, maybe, or we didn't know to do, or we just weren't sure about. And so we thought we'd just do it at the next opportunity, forgetting that all time is happening now. This is our chance, our one opportunity. The Eminem song comes to mind. So if we are willing to actually do the work of reclaiming what it means to be part of us under the all, we start to see the us versus them mentality is only because we've been in a mixed war and not known it, where the territory being fought for is our mind, hearts, and soul. And what is the point of gaining the world when we lose our soul in the process? Money does not go with us, especially when it's just based off fiats. Fiats are spoken orations by a corporation that is in charge and command and able to make those commands. But if the corporation has no ability to make those orations, or the orations are not given credit, those fiats mean nothing, which is what the current sea we are sailing on unawares under the Holy See, where the Vatican declared us all dead and lost at sea under the 1666 Sequi Vi Trust Act. When the Holy See took command of the helm and became the invisible ghost at the top of the manorial system we've all been under, which led to a feudal system that is futile to resist, when you don't shift your identity from being a status label or thing outside of what is true and real, you can use these things, but under the usufruct, abuse is what makes it imperfect. But it's there. Usus, fructus, and abusus are the three criteria for an imperfect usufruct. But you can use someone else's property, profit off of the use of someone else's property, and abuse it if you are under an imperfect usufruct. And when the unidroit of the one way is pushing towards a death cult, that's a problem, I'd say. But I've said a lot today, and it's 11 o'clock nearly. So I'm going to keep this to just the hour that was allotted and say next week we will be coming back on Friday at 10 a.m., but hopefully on Peaceful Inner Warriors United. That channel, I am doing my best to grow, and I will be moving over much of the content that I believe to be valuable, though not so quickly. And I won't be posting the videos that I do where I'm just driving and experiencing my life, but feeling like I might have something to share that could end someone's strife, or at least offer some refuge. Which is why I do all of what I do, because at the end of the day, I want you to know where your power is. I want it to be in your heart. I want you to see how valuable you are when you are whole and complete, and see how much you matter in the scheme of things. I want us all to come together and be able to actually move through the uncomfortable emotions that make us uncomfortable around ones like me that are willing to say the things that most don't, in order to go where it matters, which is the emotion that needs to be stirred, which is the mini stir of the minister that I am not. However, I do feel that having a ministry without the religion of the religioning of us based on sex of BS would potentially be something viable in the future. But to take on a title of a minister or to preach the words of a gospel, I say no. What if we are just here to create the special practice that will serve us uniquely, based on all that makes each of us all that we are? For we are the individuated expressions of the all that we all come from, belong to, are reflections of, and only feel separate from, while we believe there to be an us versus them. The mixed war between the public and private just requires a change of identity, and we'll get there. But for now, I'm going to say thank you. Subscribe to Peaceful Inner Warriors United. Share this message with someone else that would benefit. And if you would, please do leave some comments as to what this message means to you, for you, and what you're going to do with it. Because at the end of the day, the fun fact is that if we don't act, it's just fiction. Peace.